What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, White River Rambo for White River Rambo Customs, located right here in Salem, Indiana. If you guys have been part of the channel for a long time, I appreciate you sticking around. If it's your first time joining me on the channel, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. I get lots of questions about all the things I do in my tiny shop, about how I cut and fabricate and work on aluminum. In today's video, we're going to do as many as possible, so let's do 100 different ways to cut and fabricate aluminum. What? Hey, over here, like, what are you looking at? What's going on? Oh man, gigs up. On today's episode, we're going to have all the guys from Tiny Boat Nation right here in the White River Rambo Customs shop.
Hey buddy!
Thanks for joining me, guys.
What's going on?
So lots of experience with aluminum on this episode, and you're going to get a lot of different viewpoints from many states, many different backgrounds, and, well, probably a few different viewpoints as well. Chris, you want to start it off?
I'm Chris from Senate John Boats. I have a YouTube channel, and I'm also on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, Senate John Boats.
Yep, for the LGBTQ community, that's your channel.
I'm the state representative for Georgia.
So I'm Jeremy, 24/7 Boat Customs, out of Newman, Illinois. We're on Instagram, YouTube, it's 24/7 Boats, TikTok.
Yep.
Fiberglass master.
Yep, the fiberglass master, that's right.
Primarily fiberglass.
Yep.
Ryan, Fire and Fishing. I also do the YouTube videos on TV Nation Outdoors, and I'm working with Chris at TV Nation Outdoors Southeast in Georgia.
Nate, the owner of TBN Midwest out of Illinois. You can find me at all the local watering holes.
And you guys just started your brand new podcast.
Yes, we did.
That's going to air here in the next couple of weeks or so. Okay, so be looking for that. And
It'll be, the podcast is called the Drain Plug Podcast, but for right now I think it's going to be on YouTube on our
The
channel.
TBN Outdoors.
TBN Outdoors channel, but then it'll also be available on all your podcast platforms, Apple, Google, YouTube podcasts.
Sure.
It'll be on there, and it'll be called the Drain Plug.
sure. I'll post all those links in the description. As always, you can search the hashtag White River Rambo or at White River Rambo on all your favorite social medias. So let's get into today's video. Well, Chris, what's your favorite way when you're cutting aluminum?
So from my training, knowledge, and experience, the best way, my go-to for cutting aluminum, ninja weapons.
Yes.
I usually go with throwing stars if I gotta, just kind of hack something real quick. But if I need to make something precise, I go with my White River Rambo sword.
Now, is there something that you say every time you get it out?
Usually yee, real loud.
Yeah.
as I'm coming out of my sheath. I didn't bring my sheath today, but that's what I normally do. On a serious note, though, like usually my go-to if I'm cutting sheet material, and sometimes tube, if I need to just cut something quick, is going to be a skill saw. But my preferred method is usually to use a miter saw.
Miter
That's what
saw?
I like to use the most.
I'm eating moths now.
Yeah, we
You
got
see that?
moths coming in.
That's nice. So when we talk about skill saws, miter saws, you want to touch on this a little bit? What's your preferred? Do you just go buy whatever is cheapest to get you through, or do you have a specific brand?
I've done both. The construction wood blades is what I started with, like on a standard miter saw. I use the 24 tooth construction type blade, and it does okay, but you do have to be careful, especially cutting angle. You can grab a chunk of it and it will want to sling it back to you. We moved into more of the non-ferrous metal type blades that are specifically made for cutting aluminum, and they seem to work a lot better. I'm cheap, so I shop at Harbor Freight a lot, so I usually go with Harbor Freight brand like Hercules or Bauer if they have it.
I frequent the Harbor Freights myself, sir.
Hey, China does it right sometimes.
You're absolutely right.
China does it right.
You're absolutely right. So, yeah, like, you can't go wrong with the cheap stuff. Just be very careful because kickbacks in aluminum are very unforgiving. And have you ever been hurt?
I do. I have a small scar on my stomach here from a chunk of aluminum coming back at about 9,000 miles an hour. Cut through my shirt. So, yeah, it's not fun. I was cutting a compound angle on a miter saw, and I didn't realize that the offcut piece was going to hit another piece that I had sitting on the miter saw, and that offcut piece got jammed in between the two and went straight back to my stomach. It hurt.
Probably one of the most dangerous things about the miter saw is the gap in the fence, and a small chunk coming off will get bound in there, and it'll come out in every which direction.
Yeah. Dude, this stuff is really, really dangerous. Make sure that you are careful, especially with offcut stuff, compound cuts, and always wear safety glasses when it comes to aluminum.
Yeah.
I have unfortunately gotten aluminum in my eye. Those face shields are amazing.
These were $20 at Harbor Freight.
Yep.
Like
At
safety glasses
minimum.
and that is a great idea.
At minimal. I hate to be the, hey, safety guy, but
You're right, yeah.
aluminum hurts when it comes back at you at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Absolutely. So, Nate, what's your go-to? Yeah,
I'm a surgeon with this bad boy right here.
yeah.
Cut circles.
Upside down, inside out.
Absolutely.
Yep, I get it.
Absolutely.
Have you ever run a jigsaw?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now,
I prefer the battery powered one.
the battery power. Now, is there enough amps with that?
Yeah.
So for me with a jigsaw, you have to positively push down on it all the time, because the vibration of it, when a tooth catches, it wants to push the machine away.
It's as dangerous as voting for Biden.
Oh my God, you're right. I don't know if it's that dangerous or not. I mean, the worst you could lose is a limb with that. But so for me, I've used these Bosch aluminum scroll saw blades, which is T227D is the part number, and I found that these work really well. But just like all aluminum, I give it a little shot of PB Blaster every now and then to keep it cool and keep it from galling up.
Do you wax your blade?
No, I spray stuff instead of using the wax.
We started using the wax stick. It's so badass. Your blades last like 10 times longer.
Yeah.
Drill bits, jigsaw blades, sawzall blades, they don't gum up, and you don't need that much.
Come in tight right here, Mr. Cameraman.
The wax totally prevents that 100%.
So what we're talking about, the galling up, aluminum actually creates heat. So you want something that cuts fast and removes material, but when it doesn't remove material and that material starts to heat up, it will stick to the blade, it'll stick to carbide, and it'll do this. See where the aluminum has chunked and got in between? Now, not so much on the jigsaw blades, but on your circular saw blades, ones that have a coating, Diablo makes a good one. I prefer these Hercules ones. This blue coating is
It is, but if you take one of those wax sticks, like on the chop saw, and you just turn it on,
even
and
on
just,
this.
yeah, and you can just hold it on the side, it'll last for the next 50 cuts.
Yeah.
It won't gum up at all, and it cuts so much cleaner. It was just a little trick that my TIG welder showed me. Yeah.
You ever use one of them?
Oh, nibbler?
Yeah, that's a big nibbler.
I've used one. I
So-
don't own one.
So this one was like $600. And like if you do a lot of sheet steel, it's great for that. It's rated for 10 gauge. It works on aluminum. It does okay, but it's straight cuts only. With the width of it and this,
Oh, yeah.
for me, it doesn't turn.
Right.
I guess you can loosen it up and it will turn some, but the trailing edge of it, it won't let a very tight
Can't
radius.
make
So have you ever had any close calls? Have you ever hurt yourself or anything?
Never hurt myself, but I've had a lot of close calls.
Yeah. Now, do you have specific PPE that you pay attention to all the time?
You don't
No.
want to answer that.
No.
you're not
This is what I work in. This is what I weld in. This is what I cut in. Crocs, shorts, t-shirt, daily.
OSHA approved.
OSHA approved 100%.
Raise your,
I do
bacon
that
naked. Raise your
all the
hand.
time.
Raise your hand if you've pulled aluminum from Nate's eye before.
When you hang out with a guy named Send It, you can't be scared your whole life.
Jeremy, what do you got?
Well, my go-to most of the time, when it comes to aluminum, the old reciprocating saw. I'm more or less a fiberglass guy. So if I'm cutting on a aluminum boat, I'm pretty much just trying to destroy it. But really, this comes into play more than anything if we're cutting out and doing quick cuts, the demo side of it, before we try to do a rebuild on it.
Yeah.
Those are violet. I love violets.
It's the exciting part, you know, the demo.
I'll tell you one thing, like the only time I use this is if I want to remove foam.
That too.
Because that long thing it'll reach down there where, you know, Chris's won't.
Yeah.
And so
That's what she said.
we're having too much fun. Have you ever been hurt?
Yeah, I mean, you can see I came prepared just to walk into your shop. I'm wearing safety glasses.
Yeah.
Had my eye drilled on a couple of times from
Really?
fragments.
You have
And
a piece of metal in your eye?
piece of metal in my eye, my left eye both times, and well, there's still a few good burns, so I've gotten more accommodated to. We're welding, we're cutting, we're wearing sleeves, wearing gloves.
I don't know about everybody else,
I don't weld the gloves when I paint, but
right. I don't know about everybody else, but I get nicks and scars all over my hands all the time. And it's just, it usually isn't serious, but it's just some little thing that got me.
Yep.
Like that right there the other day, I had a really sharp piece of aluminum, I was deburring it. Well, the burr kind of hung up, and when it come off, my finger just caught right off that real sharp piece of metal, and it was bad enough where I had to go get a Band-Aid so I wasn't bleeding all over a brand new piece of aluminum. So, yeah, it's serious, guys. Be safe. All right, Ryan. So, what's something that we haven't talked about?
So, actually, when I first started cutting and fulling with aluminum, I used an angle grinder a lot with a cutting wheel. And I mean, I cut angle, aluminum sheeting, pretty much everything that I needed to with this one tool that cost me about 40 bucks to get started with. And this was really all I had.
That is a great point. Did you know that there are different cutoff wheels specifically designed for cutting aluminum?
Yes.
So I get these at Benchmark Abrasives, not sponsored. You can go check them out. But the aluminum ones, they don't gall up. They don't, you know, like we talked about earlier, how, you know, they generate heat. The aluminum ones, they clean out a lot better.
Yes.
And honestly, they last forever because aluminum cuts pretty easy when you got the right abrasive. But
I didn't know that when I first started. So the
I
cuts
didn't
were
either.
always real nasty. They weren't good, clean, finished cuts, but it got the job done. So that's what I started with. Now I like the shears for aluminum sheeting.
Yeah.
And the miter saw for all of our angle and tube and stuff like that.
Sure, it'd be great if you got the space and the income to have one.
Yeah. Well,
you're talking about like
the Harbor
a
Freight,
pneumatic.
the pneumatic.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And
Pretty similar to like the nibbler style, but it's a shear.
yes, it's good until you get to a corner.
Now, what's the max thickness that you can do on a shear without deforming it?
090 is probably the max. 090 it'll cut it, but it doesn't prefer it. The 050 it cuts through like butter.
Is it the
got the two
shear
sides
like
and the
this,
one-
or is it's the one in the middle?
Yep.
I'm sure that has a name. Put it in the comments below because it's escaping us right now.
It looks like.
So one thing that we've not talked about is the die grinder. Now, die grinder is going to be kind of a last resort, but let's say you got a hole saw, which we've not really talked about either, but you don't have the perfect size, right? You need it to make it a little bit bigger. There's a couple different ways you can do that. With a aluminum die grinder, okay, it's got more of a ferrule to it instead of a file look, but this will walk and jump away from you with very much pressure. So there's a learning curve on how to control it, but absolutely a useful tool for a precise fit in some situations.
Your speed.
And your speed, right? So slower?
Slow. I prefer slow.
Yeah.
I went crazy one time, and that's the last time.
Yeah, so you keep your RPMs a little slower. On a hole saw, I've been using these for the last couple of years, these TCT carbide bits. They're all over Amazon, eBay. You get 13 or 15 piece set for under $100. Okay, check local listings. But they're good. Okay, they're cheap. The reason I like these is because it's all one unit, and then the drill bit itself is replaceable. So I'm not worried about where's my mandrel.
Right.
You know, which hole saw fits and is the bit in there straight, because
Changing
last
things
time it
around.
got away
Yeah.
from me. And the set comes, if it's 13 hole saws, it'll come with 15 bits. So if I break a bit or whatever in one, I can rob Peter to pay Paul out of another one to put in there and make it work. I really pay attention to what I'm doing with these, you know, in off-camera situations, because it's carbide. So if you're running it in there, you're fine. But if it jumps or you hit it really hard, you'll break a tooth.
Yeah.
Well, if you break a tooth and it sticks in your sheet, what's going to happen? The next tooth's going to come around and hit the carbide, and the whole thing's ruined. So they're good. They're not perfect, but honestly, if you're using these in a drill press, you won't have that issue. But we all know how that works. Another thing we didn't talk about yet was a mini saw. Now, I mean, you can see what it is, right? It's more or less a grinder motor with a small, 4.5 inch saw blade. These things are dangerous. They will cut for days. Like, there's plenty of power there, and as long as you keep a sharp blade, which, you know, it obviously will help if you keep it waxed, they will cut. However, the blade's very narrow and they get pinched very easily, and it'll kick back at you, it'll jump. This is a last resort for me. I don't use this anymore, even though I used to use it all the time. It's too much for me. I don't do it anymore.
We use the Milwaukee compact bandsaw a lot.
Okay.
When I'm inside the boat, gotta cut some angle.
Yeah.
That way I'm not jumping in and out of the boat all the time, and that battery powered Milwaukee I can do it real quick and don't have to get out to the miter saw or anything like that. So.
I have a lot of cordless stuff, but for some reason, I like the power of corded stuff,
Yeah.
and it's cheap, right? So,
Right.
y'all know Harbor Freight, under $100, right, of the corded power band. I like this so much, I keep two of them. This one is my mobile unit, and then right back over here, Mr. Cameraman, I made a small stand. Now, recently Harbor Freight has come up with a mobile stand that also turns into a chop saw. I'll put the link for that in the description as well. Cool little unit. So, I'll ask you like I ask everybody else, have you ever had any close calls?
One day I was using our portable version of this with the cutting wheel, and it was a new tool that Chris had bought, so I wasn't used to the way, holding it. And I came down on my finger with that cutting wheel, and it cut my finger. Yeah.
Couple stitches?
No, just
No, didn't get you that
taped
bad.
it up real tight. And,
That's scary for me, because I've had some kickbacks that nicked a finger, and I'm like, man, because I know what a cutting wheel will do to steel, right? So, one thing that's another great talking point. These, they're meant for pressure on the wheel. They're not meant for pressure sideways. So for me, I think the number one failure of these is leaving them on. You lay it on the bench, or it gets knocked off,
Yep.
and
just
then
like this, and you're laying it on that blade right there.
Yep. Or you bump it or something, and it puts a crack in there,
Yeah.
and then next time you turn it on, this thing comes apart. So for me, I always, if I'm using a cutoff wheel and I'm putting my tool up or whatever, I take it off. I immediately take it off, and I'll put a flat disc on it, because I've never had a failure from a flat disc.
I always check mine before I turn it on too.
Yep, good point. Well, one thing we forgot to talk about is a plasma cutter. Now, plasma cutter is not super ideal for aluminum for a handful of reasons. One, it's, you're using power and heat to cut aluminum, which can warp your material. And two, plasma is a dirty process. So if it's something that you're going to weld, the plasma cutter will actually leave some dirty contaminants on the edge of your material. So I normally don't use a plasma cutter for cutting sheet aluminum unless I'm playing with some badass artwork. Guys, thanks for joining us on this episode. Once again, White River Rambo Customs, located in Salem, Indiana. Check out all of the links in the description, from Tiny Boat Nation to the Drain Plug podcast. You guys got a massive shop of all kinds of boating accessories and one hell of a YouTube channel, I might add. So from Send It John Boats back in the back, 24/7 boats, Fire Ant, is it Fire Ant Customs? Or
Fire Ant Fishing.
Fire Ant Fishing, and Nate
TBN
from
Midwest.
TBN Midwest. Appreciate y'all joining me. Blow up the comments, share, like, subscribe. You know how it all works. We'll see you on the next one.
You still filming? I usually whip it out and go, send it! Or I ask them how deep they want it.